The Buffalo Bills don't just have a coaching issue, they have a ownership issue. And I can sit up here and blame McDermott, I can sit up here and blame Bean. I've said all I needed to say all season long, and I've been proven right time and time and again. I even got the season right. I said this team is going to go 11-6 and make the division. If you don't believe me, go back and watch the videos. I've said they were going to go in that direction, lose the divisional round. Why? Because McDermott was going to find a way for this team to lose the game. And it may not even be directly tied to his coaching decisions, but when you take a look at Bean and Brandon Bean as a Brandon Bean and McDermott as a partnership, and how they've been able to form this roster, how McDermott has changed the offensive philosophy, which, by the way, I am surely convinced now that Brian Daboll left because of Sean McDermott's fucking ego. His ego got in his way. He wanted to run the football a lot more. He wanted to change the offensive philosophy of his team. He wanted to focus more on the defensive side of the ball and have the offense match the defense. That's what he wanted. And I can guarantee you, when you have two alpha male personalities clashing at each other, yeah, Brian Daboll was going to hit the door. And quite frankly, I'm at a point now where I'm not even going to blame Ken Dorsey. I'm not going to blame Ken Dorsey. Because are we sure that Ken Dorsey wanted to run this offense? Are we sure about that? Or was that Sean McDermott that wanted to put an input on this shit? And look, Joe Brady, Ken Dorsey, does not matter. The offensive philosophy was terrible for day freaking one. It was terrible. It was terrible for this season. And now we have regressed offensively. Don't take a look at the stats. Fuck the stats. Look at the context. Look at the film and tell me that 2020 or 2021 was 2020 and 2021. Tell me that 22 and 23 was just as good as those years. Because if you do tell me that, then you're an idiot that does not pay attention to football. But anyway, let me get off that subject. We have an owner that is afraid to pull the trigger of letting McDermott and Brandon Bean go. And this is what I will say. Brandon Bean is a guy that I don't mind if they keep him here. Because Brandon Bean's a coach. He's a general manager. He's going to do as what the coach wants to do. He's going to get players that fits what the coach wants to do. So I don't mind if you keep Brandon Bean here, but knowing how Brandon Bean and Sean McDermott are a package, you may not have a damn choice. And before people want to sit up here and say, I don't want to go back to the drought years, well, guess what? I want to win a damn Super Bowl. And for 8 years, Sean McDermott has not shown the ability to get it done. Brandon Bean, as good as a GM that he is, has not fully stabilized this roster enough to be a championship contender. Because in years where we didn't need to upgrade the defensive line, we decided to spend a boatload of money on the defensive line. In years where the offensive line needed an upgrade for Josh Allen, where the receiving core needed an upgrade for Josh Allen, where the running back position needed an upgrade for Josh Allen, we failed in upgrading those positions in those certain years. We should have been had a number 2 receiver. We should have been had at least a number 2 running back. We should have been had more. We should have been had more receiving room, and we should have been had more offensive line help. We just upgraded the offensive line this year by getting Connor McGovern and Osiris Torrance. That should have been addressed after 2020. You did it in 2019, and look what happened. Your offensive line was massively better from 2018 to 19, and then you stopped doing it. You were settled in with 1-year guys on this fucking roster instead of actually getting guys that you can draft and you can develop for 4 to 5 years. It was ridiculous. It's honestly ridiculous now looking back at it, how much we failed our quarterback. And a big reason why is because of the combo package of McDermott and Brandon Bean. It is much deeper than the X's and O's and the game management that's on the football field. This is a philosophical issue from the front office all the way to the coaching staff. And the reason why we are in purgatory right now is because of these fucking 2 dudes. But you know what? Ultimately, the one man that deserves all of the blame is Terry Tagula, because he won't step in. He won't pull the trigger. Now, the question is, well, why won't he pull the trigger? Because of the Buffalo fucking Sabres. Because when Terry Tagula took over the team in 2011 with the Buffalo Sabres, this team has been in hell since he took over. For those who aren't hockey fans, the Buffalo Sabres were one of the best franchises in all of hockey. We had all-star caliber players. We had Hall of Fame level talent on this team. We had Hall of Fame coaches and Ryan Linda and Ryan. I always forget the last name, but you guys know who I'm talking about. We had all these from Ryan Miller, Thomas Vanek, Jason Palmaville, Derek Roy, Brian Campbell, Daniel Briere, all these great level players that we were able to get. And all of a sudden, Terry Pagula takes over the team in 2011. And since he's taken over the team, we haven't been back in the playoffs. We were just in the playoffs the year before. He takes over the team, and the Sabres are easily the worst franchise in all of hockey. Bust after bust after bust with draft picks. Bust after bust with general managers and head coaching staffs and player personnel. It has been a mess for over a decade since he's taken over the team. So do you really think that Terry Pagula is going to pull the trigger of firing Sean McDermott when he's already seen the results of what happens if he does become too aggressive by firing, by making the fire? He's going to take a look at the team and say, you know what? I already got one terrible franchise. Do I need to have two, especially when we're about to build a new stadium? No, he's not going to do that. So because we don't have an owner that doesn't have any fucking balls and that's ready to step up, because let's be honest here, Sean McDermott is Tom Thibodeau. He is Marty Schottenheimer. He's Jim Morris Sr. when he coached the Saints in the 80s. He is that level of coach. He's Mark Jackson with the Golden State Warriors where Stephen Curry and Stephen Curry, Draymond Green, and Klay Jackson was going to get into their form. That's the level of coach that he is. He can build a franchise up. He can build a franchise from the ground up. But when it matters most, he won't get the job done. How many years is it going to take for Terry Pagula to realize that Sean McDermott isn't the guy? How many years is it going to really freaking take before we start to realize, oh, maybe this dude has to be fired? Josh Allen is going to be 30 years of age with no fucking championship, with no championships possibly in his name, not even a Super Bowl appearance because of the ignorant coaching staff and the ignorant philosophy that Sean McDermott continues to instill with this team. It goes much deeper than the X's and O's, guys. It goes much deeper than the game management situation, the shitty, horrible situational moments that Sean McDermott continues to present to this team. It's the front office. It's how we do shit in the offseason. Because let's be honest, as much as every Bills fan wants to give Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott praise for how they're able to handle the offseason, let's be honest, the biggest reasons why we're in this situation in the first place is because of the shit that we do in the offseason. Not addressing a number two receiver has been costly for this team for years. Not addressing the offensive line, not addressing the running back position, and getting a true franchise guy. We should have, let's be honest here. Instead of getting a fucking man coverage corner, by the way, a man coverage corner that had no inkling in fitting this defensive scheme, guess who we should have drafted in that first round that everybody agreed on? Breece fucking Hall. You don't think Breece Hall, who is a better running back than James Cook, and don't give me the stats. Don't give me those stats, because Breece Hall, one player is playing for the Buffalo Bills, which, again, they upgraded their offensive line, and it's honestly been a top 10 offensive line in the league, and the other one's playing with one of the worst offensive lines in the National fucking Football League. So don't give me these two comparisons. Everyone and their mother knows that Breece Hall is the better running back than James Cook. You don't think that Breece Hall would have made a difference? You don't think that Breece Hall as a franchise guy would have made a difference for this football team? I'm just sick. I'm sick to my stomach because we want to praise Beane. We want to praise McDermott. We want to praise these offseason acquisitions that we continue to get. We want to praise the fact how we paid a 33-year-old defensive edge rusher over $100 million, including with the amount of guarantees that we gave him, not even considering the fact what happens if he actually gets hurt? What happens if he suffers an injury? All these guarantees will still go to him at 34 to 35. And even future at 36 years old too. We are stuck. And there's nothing we can do about it. And the one person that we're not blaming is Terry Pagula. He gets to get away with it scot-free. Now everyone's calling for Sean McDermott to get fired. I've been saying this shit for 2 years that he should have been out of here. I wasn't convinced that he was the head coach after that Chiefs loss in 21. And I gotta be specific about it because we lost to the fucking Chiefs 3 out of 4 seasons. He's not the guy. We all know this. But Pagula won't pull the trigger. He won't do it because of his fear of what's happening with the Buffalo Sabres is going to possibly translate to the Buffalo Bills. And he doesn't want to go back to having 2 losing franchises. And he doesn't want to be the man responsible for the collapse of these two. Even though that he is the reason why he's responsible for the collapse of the Sabres. Let's be honest. In all of fucking reality, Terry Pagula is not a good owner. He is not a good owner of this football team. Yes, he can PR his ass off. He can form a really good PR team. He can upgrade these facilities. But at the end of the day, Terry Tagula is the one person that he hands all of the responsibility to everybody else in that office while he kicks his fucking feet up and watch the goddamn fucking Wimbledon while he watches his daughter play fucking tennis. That's Terry Tagula. And the more that we start to kind of realize this, the more that I think we can just accept reality that this team won't go anywhere. Everybody can hope so, but the reality is, ladies and gentlemen, is that this team won't go anywhere as long as we got Terry Tagula as the owner of this team, as long as we got Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott as a fucking pairing. And I got to be specific about that. As a pairing, they're not going to do anything because the general manager wants to add players that fits the coach's philosophy. He wants to get players that the coach wants or that fits what the coach needs. And that's just not going to work. It can work in the regular season. Yes, it works in the regular season. But when it matters most against the best teams in the playoffs, we can't get it done. Beating the Steelers and beating the Dolphins is not going to be good enough. Beating the Patriots isn't good enough. We haven't beaten a great team in the playoffs since the fucking Baltimore Ravens in 2020 during a COVID year, where our offense scored 1 touchdown. That was 4 fucking years ago, or 4 seasons ago. And we're still going to hold on to that? When you actually really take a look at the playoff resume, it's been against bum teams. And the fact that this idiot gets more fucking time because we want to use the injury excuse is exactly going to be the reason why this team will waste Josh Allen's prime. If I'm Josh Allen, I would demand a trade because we're not going anywhere. And as long as the leadership and the ownership, the leadership and the front office and ownership, as long as that, if they don't want to improve, then we're not going to get better. If they don't want to change their philosophy, we're not going to get better. And they have this Bills organization on, and it's a hostage fucking takeover because they know, well, it's either our way or you can go back to what you were during the drought era, which was nothing. Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane has this team hostage. It's nothing we can do about it as fans. Because there are going to be some fans that's going to be like, well, you know what? As long as we have Beane and we have McDermott and we have Josh Allen as our quarterback, we always have a chance to win a Super Bowl. Yes, and the same fucking result will end. Losing to Kansas City, losing to Baltimore, or losing to Cincinnati, or now losing to Houston. You know what the worst part about last night's loss was, guys? Was not just the fact that we lost to Kansas City. It was the fact that you know that we're not going to get any better because of the leadership that's in charge of this team. And until that gets fixed, until they actually want to look themselves in the mirror and ask themselves, how can we get better? What do we do? What do we need to do to change? Do we need to change our philosophy? Do we need to expand upon this offense? Until we actually get somebody in there until we get somebody that can sit down with everybody and they actually can have a conversation of how they can get better, this team will be stagnant. They'll win 11 games, they'll win the division, they'll win a wild card game, and then they'll lose in the divisional round again. And it's just shameful. That's what hurts the most about this team, is knowing how stagnant the next possibly 2 to 3 years will be when it comes to the Buffalo Bills.